What a Nancy Pelosi, Condoleezza Rice, Madeleine Albright, along with George H.W. Bush and John Kerry have in common. They all went to same-sex schools. Now the new school chancellor of New York City Public Schools wants to offer parents more educational options, including more schools just for boys or girls. But not everyone agrees with same-sex schools. Here to debate, Dr. Leonard Sax, Executive Director of the National Association for Single-Sex Public Education, and Dr. Samuels, licensed therapist and founder of the Hills Treatment Center. That was a mouthful. Good morning to both of you. Thanks for getting up early.
Good morning.
Good morning. Dr. Sax, let me start with you. What is the advantage, first off, of kids going to single-sex schools?
Well, you know, I've visited over 300 schools over the last 11 years, and I'll tell you, the problem in a lot of public schools in this country, the problems are not cognitive but motivational. The problem is not that this boy cannot learn. The problem is he doesn't want to. He's more concerned about getting the next level in his video game than he is about getting an A instead of a B in Spanish grammar. The all-boys format creates the opportunity to do things differently, to create a band of brothers, as they did at Urban Prep on the south side of Chicago, where you have an alternative culture in which it's cool to be smart. You create a different culture in the school with teachers who've had appropriate training in how to do this. Look, just putting all the boys in one room by themselves doesn't accomplish anything good. I can tell you about a lot of schools where they did that. Teacher comes flying out of the room saying, who came up with this stupid idea of putting all the boys in one room? We got to have the girls in the room to civilize the boys. So the all-boys format by itself accomplishes very little, but it creates an opportunity to do things differently.
All right, and Dr. Samuels, on the flip side, removing the opposite sex from the classroom, does that hurt in any way the educational process? If so, how?
Well, you know, first of all, I think you have to have an understanding that high school and learning is not just about math and English. It's about healthy socialization with the opposite sex. If, you know, and to me, this is what the teachers, the counselors, and the therapists are there to try to teach our kids, is how to have healthy relationships. Now, if you isolate them by gender, what happens is they never actually learn how to work through their insecurities and fears with the opposite sex. So by the time they get to college, they're so suppressed at that particular point that there's a big fear of them then acting out, and them being so uncomfortable with the opposite sex, they're going to turn to drugs and alcohol in order to sort of medicate those feelings. And then you've got a tremendous amount of trouble, because college can be such a difficult transition.
What about that, Dr. Sax? Now, this is spreading all over the country.
I would encourage Dr. Samuels to look at some of the research on this point. In my book, Girls on the Edge, I present the scholarly research on this point. Girls attending girls' schools are much less likely to use drugs and alcohol at school and subsequently compared to girls from the same neighborhood with the same demographics attending co-ed schools. And look, we're not saying every kid should be in a girls' school or boys' school. We're saying parents should have a choice. In the private sex country, 7% of private schools are single sex. Why not make that choice available in the public sector? Fewer than 1% of public schools offer any kind of option. We're not saying every kid should be in a single sex school, but we're saying why not give every parent a choice?
It's gone from fewer than a dozen programs in 2002 to more than 500 today. So, Dr. Samuels, the question ultimately, though, is should this remain private where you have to pay extra for that, or should it go into the public schools?
Well, I got to say, I mean, I think that Dr. Sax, you know, is really sort of forgetting a huge responsibility that we have as adults. And, you know, a lot of our behavioral issues come from the opposite sexes not getting along or about inappropriate relationships. So, you know, we're forgetting a huge part of our learning that and teaching that we have to do with these students. And I would hate to see, you know, single gender, you know, schools grow and grow, because then I think as adults and as educators, we're not doing our job.
All right, Dr. Sax and Dr. Samuels, thanks both for being up very early, especially 3 a.m. on the West Coast. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Let us know how you feel about this single-sex public schools at FF Weekend on Twitter. Coming up.